No mai, haere mai. Welcome to the Maxim Institute podcast. I'm Jason, the communications manager here at Maxim. Each week, we pair our latest column with an insightful conversation, taking you behind the scenes of our weekly columns and chatting with the authors to unpack the research, ideas, and discussions that shape their work. Get ready to dig into the latest topic. Today, we talk to researcher Maryanne Spurdle about her recent column. Maryanne, good to have you back with us on the podcast this week.
Hi, Jason.
We are talking about your column, Living in the Red Chair. Now, that is an oblique reference to I seem to recall a TV show that I used to watch a while ago. Can you explain to me, what is the Red Chair?
People still might watch. If you haven't seen it, so Graham Norton finishes his talk show with the Red Chair with just a random audience member whose job it is to entertain them for as long as they can with a short story. And the shtick is you've got Graham Norton watching on a screen, and he's got this lever that's clearly visible, and he's holding it. And if he decides that the story is not worth it, or if he's just feeling a little bit fickle, he yanks the lever, and the person in the middle of their story gets flipped backwards.
Yeah, and they have no idea when he's going to.
No,
so
it could happen at any second. The guests know this.
The adrenaline is fully amped up because, and sometimes he doesn't even let them speak, does he? Just
looks at them and goes, nah,
I don't like you.
And then if he likes the story, they sit, they finish the story, they get their applause.
And they get to
And you don't
walk
know
off.
how it's going to go.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so the idea behind that is that he's kind of just getting rid of them. It's like, no, I don't, for arbitrary reason that maybe he just doesn't like the look of them, or he doesn't like the story they're telling, or the sound of their voice, or whatever.
Yeah.
And so he gets rid of them.
Yeah.
Right. And your column says this is happening
I saw some
in real
parallels.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You belted this column out in like an hour, right? Because you're just like,
I came back to it. But yeah, I was reading about, so the new human rights commissioners that were appointed a couple of weeks ago, a couple of them got some very negative press by people suspicious of them. Well, actually more than suspicious. One article had, transphobic in the headline, because of course, there is no worse crime.
Yes.
And when you read what the crimes actually were, it doesn't seem to be that.
Yes.
Seems to be people who have questions about what some of their allies might not question, but there was nothing inherently hateful or fear-filled about the histories that were referenced. And I think words like that just get thrown around too quickly, and the purpose of those labels isn't to inform anyone of anything. It is to tell you must ignore this person now.
It's to flip the red chair on them.
Yeah. They're too stupid or they're too hateful. We have to ignore them now.
Or maybe we don't like what they're saying, so just don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Kind of ignore them.
No evaluation of, does what they say have merit?
Yes.
Is there a reason why they've come to this opinion that we should explore further?
Yeah. Let's look into what they're saying. Yeah, none of that.
And that attitude is rife. So it just happened to be, and people, one of whom I would agree with on most things, the other I probably wouldn't, looking at his political history. But the appointments have been made to positions that they're clearly experienced for. And there's nothing alarming about their backgrounds other than you're probably going to disagree with at least one of those people. And that should be normal.
Yeah, like I don't agree with everyone that I meet. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that's happened recently here in New Zealand, but you've seen this kind of around the Western world as well.
Yeah, we're seeing it everywhere, aren't we? Another interesting article that came out again a week or two ago in the New York Times, they profiled one of their former reporters, Barry Weiss, who, and it linked in there was a piece she wrote about 6 years ago, where she interviewed a bunch of different high-profile people from all ends of the political spectrum who had put members of their own tribes off sides by questioning things, challenging things, being slightly confounding in their points of view. And here they were platforming one another, even though they weren't allies in many respects, but they were in the respect that they thought, well, actually the quote that I thought was really cool was when she's talking about how they're willing to disagree ferociously but talk civilly about nearly every meaningful subject.
Yeah.
And the meaningful subjects are often controversial.
Because people, I think, are deeply invested in them, right?
Yeah.
If you, like where they always say, don't talk about politics or religion at the dinner table, it's because those are such personal things to you, right? You're personally invested in the afterlife or your spirituality or
morality, life and death.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, but that's what you would hope people would do.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Is talk deeply about these
I was
things.
fascinated about her profiling them. And then she is now, as we're seeing more and more, independent media.
Yeah. Because she's persona non grata, right? Because that kind of happened to her when she did that.
She didn't, she just felt more and more from my vague recollection of her departure announcement from the New York Times. She felt less and less that there was a place for people like her. And the New York Times is like old school mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
And now she is, you noticed it was actually on Substack, the Free Press. So she's part of this new media movement.
Kind of independent journalism in a way, for people who want the news but don't want the position, or is it more?
And it's not necessarily because she definitely has a viewpoint. We all do.
Yeah.
But the viewpoint is grounded on this assumption that we're not going to not listen to you just because we don't agree with you.
So it's allowing that freedom of ideas to that kind of marketplace of discussion and debate around maybe what people would have as sacredly held views, but it's okay to bring them out, talk about them.
You're not in an echo chamber.
Yeah, and even if you disagree, at the end of the day, you part on good terms. You're not hating each other.
And I think that's an important distinction, because if someone disagrees with me and they're willing to ask why and they're willing to share where they're coming from, I see that as a sign of respect, not hateful.
Yeah.
If somebody just kind of nods and ignores you and carries on, I feel like that is far more insulting to one's
actually
ideas.
Engaging with the ideas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been flipped where you have to agree with somebody if you want to be seen to like them. But I think true respect and true loving of people goes way deeper than just going, oh, good on you. That's, nod.
Yeah. Well done. But I actually.
And then thinking what you're going to think anyway.
Like,
I know.
Yeah, internally I think you're ridiculous, but whatever, it's okay. Yeah. So if we've got this kind of culture that's more like tribes, I think you use the language where we we tribalize and then we polarize and we just don't talk to each other. And even to the point where a platform or an outlet is known as a certain way. And so therefore we won't even read what comes from there because it's all discounted. And
it happens on both sides of the spectrum.
Yes.
I think that's important to note because it's very easy to spot in people you disagree with. Partway through the authors of The Calling of the American Mind, one of them is a co-author on the canceling of the American mind. And they point out that in academia, it's actually common for people on both sides of the spectrum, when they've got the power to do so, to silence people who they disagree with. So
it's not just coming from one direction. It's both ways.
Yeah. The tendency is there. And kind of we've discussed about how social media, kind of soundbite culture, it's conditioning us to be lazy, to not think deeply about things, to not use our own minds, but to rely on authorities or rely on what the group thinks.
Yes.
And not be willing to swim upstream if you see something differently.
To farm out your thinking. So I'll just give that to someone else to think for me, and then I'll just take it on.
Things are complex. There's a lot to think about. And so that kind of shortcut is appealing. But what it means is you just kind of slot into, groupthink. And if somebody says or does something outside of that norm, then you just have to cut them off because that is not part of what you're to believe.
Redraw the line around them and say, look, sorry, you're out
fit. Now. And you're either in one camp or the other, which is why stories of Barry Weiss and others are really interesting, because they kind of bridge those divides and encourage others to do the same.
So if we want to bridge those divides, how could we go about doing that? So obviously we just been talking about doing some thinking for ourselves,
Yeah.
investigating, reading footnotes, clicking on links to see that things are okay, going a bit deeper. What else could we do?
And that takes discernment, because links can take you all sorts of places and you can find people who agree with all sorts of things that may not actually be true.
Yeah.
So that kind of triangulation principle, find out what else supports things, in the real world. And authorities are authorities for a reason, but you've got to take what they say with a grain of salt. I think being willing to talk to people who disagree with you is going to make you a more informed person. Reading people who disagree with you and finding out why they're saying what they're saying. Because you might come away still thinking they're wrong, but at least you understand more about why you believe what you do and where they're coming from. And I think humility is integral to all that. Like, we have to understand that we are just as likely to be wrong about something as anyone else.
What?
I know. And we might still have a thing or two to learn, possibly. So just kind of holding that attitude and just sitting in the discomfort of hearing things that clash with what we've already come to believe is true. Yeah.
So doing our own mental heavy lifting, being okay with discomfort, being a little bit humble, and we might hopefully see some of these bridges being...
And genuinely caring about people, I think. Seeing people as people.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to do that online where you're disembodied.
Yeah.
I think
and
that's part of the reason.
Pixels on a screen. Yeah.
Part of the reason things have gone the way they have is because we spend so much time engaging with people, but not people.
Pixels on a screen. Okay, you got to remember, person behind the pixels. We're all people. Oh, well, Maryanne, it's challenging, insightful, and quite confronting. So that's good. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Jason. TV's Graham Norton Show always wraps with an audience member, dwarfed by a red recliner, attempting to entertain the host with a brief story. Norton watches them on screen, smirking, his hand poised above a lever. If he feels bored or petty, the story ends abruptly as he launches the storyteller's feet over their head. The shtick has suspense, humor, pathos. We touch that lever vicariously and wish for an equivalent mechanism out here in the real world because, honestly, we all encounter people who we wish would shut up. When their noisy opinions grate against our genteel ones, it's anything but funny. So we organize ourselves into tribes, increasingly virtual, to shelter our opinions. Few leave their tribe anymore to mingle dangerously with people who might challenge their beliefs. American journalist Barry Weiss once interviewed high-profile folks who, quote, are willing to disagree ferociously but talk civilly about nearly every meaningful subject, end quote. She later left the New York Times and became one of those confounding figures herself, committed to, quote, the belief that setting up no-go zones and no-go people is inherently corrupting to free thought, end quote. A reader's comment on the Times' recent profile of Weiss illustrates our booby-trapped landscape. Quote, I will personally weigh in on the side of extreme trepidation in aligning myself with anyone who aligns herself with the likes of the Federalist Society, Musk, Thiel, etc. It's one thing to speak truth in the face of groupthink, bravo. It's another to lose track of who the really, really scary people are, end quote. If the group labels someone really, really scary, we get a groupthink pass to ignore them. And not just them, anyone who talks to them. After all, there's no reasoning with monsters. Never mind that if you swapped those named deplorables with people the commenter approves of, millions of others would express identical trepidation. One man's monster is another's mate. We have the same instinct here. No sooner did our right-of-center government appoint new human rights commissioners than Graham Norton-esque pundits placed them in the red chair. Yes, Stephen Rainbow is a long-standing LGBT activist, but his beliefs challenge some of his allies. Object to someone questioning a conversion therapy petition on social media? Get squeamish addressing the awkward aspects of championing one of the world's least gay-friendly regimes? Then Stephen must be a heretic. Flip the chair. Melissa Darby has devoted her academic career to improving Maori children's education, that's true, but she's irreverent enough to joke about identity politics. Pull the lever. Concentration camp survivor Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote, "If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. Yet anyone, at any moment, could be flipped into irrelevance or infamy for listening to the wrong person, questioning the wrong dogma, or reaching the wrong conclusion. Can you feel the suspense? It's killing us."
Thanks for tuning in to the Maxim Institute podcast. If you want to stay updated on our latest research and insights into New Zealand politics and policy, sign up for our monthly forum email and event invites on our website. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. From the team at Maxim, mā te wā. Goodbye for now.